I like Mouse.
No, Mouse is fine.
There's 3 tiers of art. There's high art, there's pop art, and then there's low art.
Right.
And then there's Forces of Good and Evil.
Yeah, that is way down there. I will agree. Well, hello.
Yo.
It's Wednesday.
Hey!
Time for the Mattriarchy. I am, as always, your host, Matt Reese. I am here from Scottsbluff, Nebraska, to bring on Twitless's famous Comics Creators Club.
Yeah, goodness gracious.
Well, you'll all be glad to know that I do not have to rush off anywhere. So despite the fact that we're starting horribly late, we can have a really thorough and mind-blowing conversation about whatever we feel like for as long as we feel like it.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the internet's premier comic-based train wreck.
And for premiere, we mean it's the second time we've done this particular thing.
Right. Oh, goodness. But no, thank you to our amazing panel. We have, obviously, your host, Reese, and myself, Twitless. We do comics. We like to even pretend that we even know something about what we're doing. But we actually brought some people who do know what they're doing. So introducing to you The Metal, who we discussed in our last Comics Creators Club. Yeah. And also joining us is Matt C., who is, you may know from the Kyrie, right? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which I looked up just like seconds ago because I do my research, right? And apparently that comes from it's kind of like the Eastern Orthodoxy, or kind of the Greek Orthodox Church, kind of it's a prayer reference.
Yeah. Early, it's a liturgical prayer that's contemporary to the story itself. You can say, I think that it's important for readers to contribute to things. So if they want to say it, Kyrie, I think that's a fully legitimate pronunciation. If you want to talk about the Celtics point guard, that's fine.
When I asked you this question, Matt, see, you told me it's Kyrie. I'm offended.
Yeah,
we're gonna have an Aerith, like Final Fantasy pronunciation debate right now.
Hold up. What if people want to think it's about the Mr. song?
Yeah, that would also be,
and that's fine too.
Yeah.
I've come to a separate piece about all of this.
You've come.
Well, when you pick weird Greek terms as the title,
we're just gonna go to Kyrie.
Rounding out our panel today is Larry Bernard, who will be taking a look at some of your work in the near future, because you've done some work with Kyrie as well. And then we have at the bottom right-hand corner, we've got, last but not least, #1 Marmaduke fan, who also does comics, but not about a giant dog.
Hey, everybody. I will... Clifford the Big Red Dog was a big inspiration in my youth, but has no influence on my current artistic practice, definitely.
So here's the question, Marmaduke. When you're done with Jane Wannabe Gladiator, which we are discussing this evening, it's available over on Webtoon. There should be a link in the description, but there's not, because I'm that together today.
Well, I'm going to be pulling it up in just a second. So
we'll have it in a second. But when you're done with it, are you going to do a dog-themed comic later?
Boy, that's a good question. I feel like I'm going to keep, even if like I do the name reveal and face reveal, I'm going to keep you have to understand, Marmaduke fan is not Marmaduke. Marmaduke fan is a humanoid dog who's insane. So I don't know. Maybe there could be something with that down the road. But it's gonna. I don't believe in taking on additional crazy projects until the most immediate project is done. So we're going to be working on Jane.
Immediate crazy.
Oh man, I wish I had that policy.
Well, before we get
prudence, I think somebody's read Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. That's what I think.
I totally did not use Jordan Peterson to give myself therapy. No way.
Clean your room and lobster.
But I'm thinking, now that I just heard Clifford the Big Red Dog, I'm thinking, what about like a communist fairy tale about a big red dog?
Okay,
No.
you know, I really want to do this. This is for after Jane Smith, but I really want to do the story of Chairman Meow, but draw him as a big, fat, ugly cat.
Oh my gosh. All right. This stream is. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. That's the end of our show.
Are you kidding? That's the beginning of our show. I've been wanting to do this show for 2 years.
Yeah, Chairman Meow. So before we jump into it tonight, I do obviously want to thank our chat for engaging with us today. We will be engaging with chat as we go on because you are, largely why we do this, apart from our own egos. We already have some great people participating in chat. We have Dave. Who was cheering us on to get the stream started several times. We've got Mrs. H saying, "Is this tomorrow's show?" And we were so late, it might as well be.
Yes.
Rusty Dio says, "G'day," and Testify says, "End the stream. It's already over," which I completely concede that point.
I'm sorry, Testify.
Well Red says, "Hi guys," and Mrs. H says, "In Soviet Russia, humans eat human."
Oh, too good, too true. Ouch.
Yes.
You see, I could just imagine Chairman Meow eating all the sparrows, and then the bugs come and eat all the crops, and then there's lots of sickly mice, and then Chairman Meow eats the mice.
Okay, since we're on the Chairman Meow thing, he apparently didn't bathe, right? So I have like a sketch of like a disgusting fat cat in a litter box that looks like Chairman Mao. So I don't know, that confirmed. That's got to be the next project immediately after I finish Jane Smith. There you go, internet.
So my highly, that's one of the things about this show is we've got a very selective, almost hand-picked audience, because anybody who saw the show and didn't like it, they picked themselves out completely from the pool.
Yeah.
So
I want to talk about how. Did you guys want to talk about Jane Smith first or Kyrie first?
I'm pulling up Jane Smith first.
All right.
I already have the posted for our audience. If you'd like to read along, we actually are going to do. We stumbled on this idea the first time we did the CCC, where we actually do a live reading of the first few pages to give our audience a taste of what they can be a part of, and also it was a lot of fun to do. We got to do like voice acting. It was great. So I'm going to pull this up in just a moment.
Oh no, I have so many female characters. Oh
yes,
no,
this is going to be great.
You know who we are.
Marm, can we just can we knock something out at the beginning? Like I've been saying Jane and Akira, and where did I get that from? Like, didn't it used to be called Jane and Akira? Like that's not the name anymore?
My Twitter account was called Jane and Akira, right?
Oh,
but
man.
then because I changed my username to Elon Muskrat at some point, the Jane and Akira account has been suspended for doing nothing. I didn't even do anything naughty on that one. And they just will not. My appeal is trapped in Twitter hell. So Akira will appear as a character, but Jane Smith Wannabe Gladiator is that's my. It's a working title. I'm happy with. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. That's a lot worse than you calling my comic Kyrie. By the way, me calling it Jane and Akira. So.
Well, shame everyone, shame Matt.
Still calling it that.
So when we go to the beginning of Jane Smith Wannabe Gladiator, like you're taking us back to, I want to say like mid 2019 or so. Is that kind of where we're starting?
Oh, you mean when I started working on it?
Yeah.
I started working on it like the tail end of December 2019. I started working on it, and then it's like I set up my art studio beginning of 2020, and I just was cooking through all of 2020. Yeah.
And I'd like to point out, for those of you who haven't picked up on this, I mean, I think everyone in the panel knows, because I think all of us have talked about it in back channels through the years. But Marm's process is charcoal, right?
Yes,
that's super. Like, I love it. As like somebody who is probably some sort of maladaptive art nerd. I love the charcoal.
There's a little story to that. So I guess kind of like the weird. Matt C once joked like no one cares about how you started drawing at 6. So I actually kind of like entered this stream consciously not wanting to talk too much about the backstory and process. But I will say my background was actually as a photorealist artist. So I would mostly draw like these massive 6-foot portraits and draw every hair. And I just wasn't happy with that work. And comics for me during that time was just sort of like a back burner nerdy thing I was interested in, but I didn't think any of my art teachers would take it seriously. And I took a comics workshop with Professor Linda Berry, who kind of like completely changed my perspective, one of the greatest teachers I've ever had in my life, and basically kind of communicated to me that if I was really passionate about making comics, I didn't have to like let the shame of, oh, I'm a comic artist, stop me from pursuing that. So I'm kind of deliberately abandoning like a earlier perfectionist, very highly detailed style from my time as an art student for Jane Smith. But I did draw a lot with charcoal, during my time as an art student. So it was just a medium I was familiar with. And one of my excuses was I kept thinking, well, I got to learn how to use ink and brush. I got to learn how to use ink and brush because that's what comic artists use. And towards the end of 2019, I said, no, I want to start this. I don't want to procrastinate on starting this. Let's draw on a medium I'm familiar and comfortable with, and let's just go for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So somewhere I've literally got like a page I tried to draw in ink. I wasn't happy with it. I said, screw it. We're going to do something I know how to do and make it work. So that's the little origin story for why the charcoal.
And I love that. Like I'm something of a musician, but I'm not very good at it. I'm lower than lo-fi. But I have this love of lo-fi music. I have this love of music that people make out of instruments that they find around, right? They make cheap guitars, tin cans instead of drums, that kind of thing, right? The whole found thing. I love the idea about people having the things in their life and striving to make something amazing out of it. So
do you listen to the because the lo-fi YouTube radio stream is one of my favorite. It's one of those streams that's like the most popular streams on YouTube. And it's great productivity music.
Yeah. My time on YouTube is entirely spent on listening to people argue. So
okay. All right. Dominic Powell in the chat saying good evening. All good to see you. Let's dig in. Yeah, let's dig in. Okay. So before we jump into it, so that just to give a brief elevator, like 30-second pitch of the book. But I don't want Marmaduke Van to actually pitch his own work. So I'm going to put someone on the spot. And what I think I'm going to do is I think this would be a clever idea. Is I think I'm going to have Matt C do the elevator pitch for Jane Smith Wannabe Gladiator.
Ooh, I like
it. And then when we get to Wild Tales of Kyrie, I'm going to have we'll have Marmaduke do the elevator pitch for that. I think that would be an interesting idea. So I'm sorry, Matt, that you are the literally the guinea pig for this new idea that I came up with.
I'm kind of upset that we didn't do this last time. I would have loved to try to pitch Reese's book.
Ladies and gentlemen, all of these stunts performed without a net.
You're exactly in front of a live studio audience. All right, so whenever you're ready, Matt C, you just let the spirit take.
All right. So Jane Smith Wannabe Gladiator is a coming of age tale about a girl who's she's struggling to figure out how to find her own strength as an individual and within her own family, and she's exploring that in a virtual world where she's learning how to I guess she's learning how to become a superhero in a way that metaphorically helps her work through family dynamic issues and find self-respect and self-validation, I guess, as a growing adult. So that's my rambling pitch. How'd I do?
I clicked with that.
No, you did really. Yeah, for an idea that I literally sprung on you in like 10 seconds. That was actually really well done. Marm, was that correct?
Yeah, and I like that you resonate. I really I really want Jane to work as a character, because my problem as a creative is I'm kind of like I'm the stereotypical scatterbrained creative, right? So, for years there have been like drawings I have in a sketchbook of a girl like Jane, but I wanted to start telling her story when I really got a feel for who is this character, what's her problem. And I had kind of like one of those like creative flashes where I knew what the ending of her story is. And once I had that, it's like, okay, now that I know who the character is, now I'm confident I can tell her story, and it's not just a bunch of disorganized fight scenes. So I'm kind of glad to hear that Matt C is sort of sensing, the importance of Jane's character to the story. So I appreciate that kind of feedback.
Awesome. It's always great to hear, and that's also why I love this club, because we get to hear our own work through other people's words. Speaking of which, let's get down to the probably the highlight, one of the main highlights of our segment, which is the voice acting bit. So here's the real question: who do we get to voice Jane? Actually, we have a narrator here, right? So someone gets to be the narrator. So who's got a good Morgan Freeman voice?
Well, I will, without a slightest hint of humility, say that of the people on the panel, I have the best voice.
Well, it depends on what kind of voice you want to go with, because I mean, you could do like a British kind of narrator. Once upon a time, in a place called Nebraska, there was a girl named Jane Smith. All her life, Jane dreamed of flying, but Jane could not fly, of course. Something like that.
So I think Larry just
Larry volunteered.
Larry just stole the narrator bit.
He just stuck his hands in the pie and said, "My germs."
Right? Yeah.
Always loved pie.
So let's all just take a moment to just realize that we all saw that, Larry. You can't escape us. We saw that. But let's get into it then. So who's gonna be the voice of Jane then? And if you say that Twitless has to do it because my voice sounds the closest to a girl, I will just drop off the stream. So
you have the right enthusiasm for how about that?
You can't say it, Twitless. You already did.
Fine. Okay. Someone has to be a voice.
I'll be sound effects. Beep,
Gotcha.
beep, beep.
I'll be the younger sister.
Nice.
All right,
Jane was small. Jane was weak. Jane was timid. For no good reason. Jane blamed this.
Must.
For no good reason, Jane blamed this on her big brother. Now, I'm sure you know this is a terribly silly thing to do. Though, if you had a brother as big and strong as John, you might just have felt as small and weak as Jane. In her head, Jane knew John had done nothing wrong. So who's going to voice John?
I can do John. And they said to one another, "Behold." Oh man, I can't read that. I'm going to make this bigger here. Hey, there we go. That's better. And they said to one another, "Behold, this dreamer cometh."
But in her heart, a small, bitter voice would say,
God, I hate him.
How do we want to cover the American Sign Language dialogue?
I just did it. You guys didn't. You didn't hear that.
You don't have your camera on, man.
Oh gosh.
What? Why are you mad?
I'm not mad.
Oh my gosh, your face is mad.
I'll be the mom.
Okay.
Well, I'm sad. My girls aren't listening.
You forgot, Marm. You forgot to snort.
Oh, well, that's the dad.
That's the dad.
Yeah, but you said your sound effects.
Well, is it a sound effect or is it the dad's dialogue?
Oh, we have a debate.
I don't know. You're the writer, and no one's
the voice of God here.
All right, I'll be mom and dad. I'll be both parts of Jane's psychometric.
I mean, that's appropriate since it's your creation.
Sure. All right, snort. Jane, you look like something's on your mind. Anything you want to ask?
That's you, Matsy.
Hey, it's my. I'm having trouble reading that.
It's my fault, not Jane's. Thank you, Webtoons. It's my fault, not Jane's.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I want to visit the Washingtons. Try sparring.
I can give you a ride if you want.
No. I'll just walk.
I'm reading Curious George.
I really love that segue there. That segue is really great.
Neat.
Beep.
So who's gonna be?
Hey, what's up, me?
Oh,
Hey, Jane. Oh, sweet, Josie.
Hi, Martha. I'm supposed to stay out of your hair today.
That's awesome.
You really got to get your own suit.
I'm just waiting for the right time to ask.
Thought you were gonna buy your own.
I am, but it's their roof, their rules.
When am I gonna get you to join the game, Josie?
I don't know. Mom says it zaps kids into La La Land.
Not really. It's just make-believe.
Just like the Danger Room.
It's like the Imagination Station.
What's the Imagination Station?
What's a danger room?
We don't watch TV.
You gonna watch us fight?
No, thank you. I'm turning off my listening ears now.
Her listening ears?
Oh, that's Josie's name for her cochlear implants. Ever since she was a baby. Mom always likes to say, turn on your listening ears, and Josie took it literally.
Muss.
Dollar's not here, is he? You said he wasn't gaming today?
Football practice. Why you asking?
I don't want to be seen in this getup.
Jane, you are covered head to toe. Which reminds me, you really should pick out a costume. How about it?
Oh, well.
I guess, yeah, happy birthday, Martha. Boom. Power Princess Dress Up 3. Zap! Zap! Zap!
Skip it.
You sure?
Yeah, let's spar.
Slam!
When I step, oh.
Go. Well,
I mean, it's her narration, so I think you should read it. You're right.
when I step inside this world, my world, it's like nothing I can describe. I feel alive. I feel lightning crackling through my fingertips.
How many pages of this are we reading?
So I think this is the last one. I wanted to get to the color.
Okay. I want you to focus on timing your charges and blocks this time.
Can't we just skip the tutorial?
Hey, I didn't write the law. You need your own account.
Alrighty. So I wanted to get through the introduction and to tease everybody with the introduction to this very interesting and crazy digital world. Links in chat for those of you, and it will be posted to the stream for you to read this on Webtoons. The first, I think, 50 pages are up already. But congratulations, everyone! Give yourself a round of applause for that amazing voice acting.
Hey,
so much fun. Yeah, so that's everyone's into the deep end, or through the looking glass, probably the more appropriate analogy for.
Okay. So let's start in with the questions. Marm, you set it in Nebraska.
Yes,
right?
It is Nebraska. Yeah, there was a slight update. It was always. Actually, no, that's not true. When back in like Daydream era, like disconnected fight scenes, I thought, oh, she'll go to Tokyo, Japan, because anime is cool. And kind of like as I was starting to get more interested in the character and her family, I thought, well, this isn't really a story about the fight scenes. This is a story about the life of an ordinary girl who has extraordinary, combat situations in the virtual world. But it makes most sense for it to be in her home, and I kind of fell in love with the idea of contrasting a really plain farm girl with I guess Mark Zuckerberg is coming out with the metaverse already, but I really wanted to play with the idea of what would something like the metaverse do for like an ordinary kid from an ordinary family.
And so, are we looking at this like as a in future, like the original X-Men movie, where it's like, this happens tomorrow,
right?
Or are we talking like an alternate universe that already has this technology in the present time, or what are we looking at?
Right. So my thinking is sort of like how in Batman the Animated Series they describe it as an alternate 40s, but they also have space laser technology in the 1940s. Mm-hmm. I wanted something that wouldn't be definite to one generation. So I've sometimes thought of it as, this is my life in the alternate 90s if I had super dope futuristic virtual reality technology, but then I also kind of want Zoomers to identify with it as that type of gaming becomes more normal for them. So really, I kind of like want to. I guess it would be set in the not too distant future, but I don't want the
next Sunday AD.
Right, right. But I don't want the world building aspect of it to distract from the maybe like the resonant character dynamic part of it. So it's going to be like a tightrope balance. I'll have to walk. Yeah. It's sort of our world, sort of not our world.
Yeah, and part of the reason that strikes up to me specifically is I love some of the texture and rules that you put into the virtual space, and they're also very much similar to some of the digital world rules that both myself and Matt Johnson put into our comics involving cyberspace and cyber travel. And so I was reading through this, and when I went into it reading it, I knew about some of the fights, I knew about the training, but I didn't realize it was in a digital space. And so I'm going through this and I'm like, now this feels really familiar to me.
So let's actually go around the panel, and I would love for everyone to kind of just start things off a bit with kind of, and Matt, I think Reese kind of started it off well with kind of like what is something that what is either your favorite part of Jane Wannabe Gladiator, or what's something that really leapt out to you as really a strong kind of takeaway, like something that really impressed you in your mind about it. I'll say
metal next.
Yeah, metal. Yeah,
let's go down the list. Here.
Right. Down the list.
Well,
perfect.
So probably the thing I like the most is, as a gamer, and you can tell this was written by somebody who plays games, I really like the connectivity of Jane's personality and attitude towards having to play a tutorial, and specifically the tutorial character, like that little fairy that keeps telling her what to do, because tutorials are the most frustrating part of video games, and I wish they would just get deleted out of them.
You don't like Oma Chow?
No, I hate it. Absolutely.
At least you could pick up Oma Chow and throw him off the side of this.
Yeah. But like it reflects perfectly, like this character feels like a person, because that's how like you'd expect somebody in that situation to react to that sort of thing. She's kind of miffed about everything, and she kind of just would wish she had her own account already so she didn't have to do this every single time she logs in. It's very personable and relatable because of that.
Thanks, the metal.
Yeah. So Twitless, you're next, man.
So I'm going to pair it off a little bit of what Reese said a bit, which is, just the art style. And that's something I think that unifies Matt C. It's interesting when we paired these together. I didn't know how much they would have in common. But this is not, the styles we're seeing here they're not typical comic book art styles, but that is not a negative here. In fact, it makes them very memorable. And I remember talking when we spoke, Matt, you had mentioned how flight had been a really important influence. I could definitely see that kind of working in your work, but I can also see it kind of working here. So Marma, I might ask you, like, have you ever read Flight or those types of comics that they're not the typical big two, but I could definitely see some non-traditional comic book influence working here. And again, that made it very memorable, that the charcoal, the line work, the very scratchy, earthy feel, which fits and pairs so well with the earthy, organic landscape that the characters live in.
So I haven't read Flight. I'll look for it. I do read a lot beyond the big two. And I took like a 10-year break from big two comics to just mostly read manga, but also read kind of like Franco-Belgian comics. I think the biggest influence on my thoughts on panel composition would kind of be late Will Eisner, when he was getting out of superhero work and getting into like his really personal experimental work. And he's also written some like the best textbooks on sequential art and thinking about panel composition,
graphic storytelling. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You can tell as soon as he got out of doing the Spirit and started doing A Contract with God, he sort of thought, okay, now I get to make the panels look however I want. So that's kind of like a big idea for me that I wanted to have.
And this page is an excellent example of that. So I'm glad we're actually we're resting on this particular page, because you can see that we don't have our typical gutters and panel borders here. This is very much, it reminds me a little bit of like Mobius, in the sense of like, just the page. There's definitely a sequence, but it's like, it's a very organic sequence that you're following, and you're not following typical gutters.
Yeah, one of the things I think is really interesting too about a Contract with God, and we don't have any panels to show off here. I could fish them out, but I'm not gonna. Is that like in a lot of ways, especially the first story in A Contract with God, the Contract with God story, is interestingly because it bridges a lot of or blurs a lot of lines between storybook and sequential art. And that's something that I think is really, really interesting, especially because when you look at Will Eisner's career, I mean, there were a lot of years between The Spirit and A Contract with God, almost 20, when he was just doing commercial art and instructional art, educational art stuff. And so for him to come back into comics and the way he kind of turned those conventions on its head was really interesting. And I think this page also, it leads very much into that concept of sequence, and leads your eye and almost ignores the gutters. And it does ignore the gutters entirely. They're just implicit.
Yeah, they said there's like an implicit gutter, but like it's
Knapel did that a lot in Bigfoot Bill too, where a lot of his action scenes are intentionally done with no
right. And like I said, when you mentioned Euro comic scene, I immediately thought of Mobius, and he's someone who does a lot with that as well. So again, like I said, these are some strong, memorable anchors. So good stuff.
Good work.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Denata. Larry.
So the first thing I want to say is I really appreciate your choice of medium, because there's a sort of dreamlike quality in the pre-virtual world sections as well as the virtual world sections that I think your use of charcoal as a medium actually really does a good job of highlighting in the work itself.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's actually a really good point too. And one of the things I think also use of color plays in is, which is real, right? Which side of the divide is Jane's real life in? And I think it's clear she feels like it's the virtual world, which itself is an interesting question.
It gives me the sense of like, kind of, like with the Wizard of Oz, how like, how Dorothy saw her life as like black, kind of dismal. And then she goes through and has this magical adventure in a colored land, but then she learns to kind of like see her own world better by the end. I'm wondering if that's something that, if that's maybe the end of her journey, perhaps.
I don't think you can even compare those, because that's Kansas and this is Nebraska.
Two
very different places.
So different.
Now, a very interesting thing though, also about setting a virtual reality story in Nebraska. What most people don't know is there is a lot of telephone and computer connectivity going through Nebraska. Mm-hmm. That's because of a little thing called the Strategic Air Command.
I didn't know that.
We have actually some of the best internet in the country. So when we have problems in the show, it's usually me, not my internet connection.
So this being said, in Nebraska also has a little reality quality, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Awesome.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, Matt.
So for me, this is going to be a little personal. But Marv got me into comics YouTube criticism, CG crowdfunding sphere. He was one of the first people like I subbed to back in 2018, I guess. And then he started. He said like, I'm going to put words in his. I'm going to summarize while he's here, and he can speak for himself, but I'm not going to let him. Like my summary is that he I don't know, like some of that drama from 2018. He just said, I'm done with CG. I might be done with YouTubing. I don't know what I want to do with YouTube, and I'm just gonna try and explore some stuff, and I suppose like find myself creatively and figure out what I want to do with my platform. And at the same time, that's when Jane and Akira starts happening. So Jane and Akira I'm calling this Jane and Akira. When Jane Smith want to be Gladiator, and the account, the Jane and Akira account shows up, and then and the comic becomes an expression of what I perceive to be him kind of doing like a walk through the desert sort of moment where he needs to go find himself in the wilderness and figure things out, and he's gonna pick up a medium that is gonna allow him to express himself in a very, I suppose, like it's a very emotional medium with the charcoal, and it's a little dark, and then and then like I don't keep up with Jane Smith wannabe Gladiator as much, but I am seeing that he's exploring video games more, and he's talking about manga more. And then today I catch up with Jane Smith, and I realize it's Jane Smith became like a manga that's a video game story.
All right.
So it's really kind of fun how it just kind of parallels. I don't know. It almost seems autobiographical in a way. So.
Okay, Dr. Freud. All right, so I want to bounce off that. So it's partially true that like I did have like a moment of like I'm sick of all this. I'm sick of this comics drama, right? So I kind of used like my comics YouTube as a way to say, man, I love all these comic books. I really, really love comic books. I should have a channel so I can talk about comic books. And I finally got to the point around 2018 where I felt like this channel's become my life, and I didn't want the channel to become my life. I wanted the channel to be a vehicle to like meeting comics people and discovering comics. So you're exactly right that I did kind of like consciously say, time to take a break from YouTube and start the art project. I wouldn't say it's as literal as like, oh, I play video games, so now Jane's going to play video games, right? It's not like that one-to-one, but it's at least true that I am kind of like, I did kind of like have a personal moment where I said, I've got to decide to make this happen, or it won't happen. Nobody will make your creative project for you. So that part's correct.
Would it be true to say, at all true to say that I guess that you're writing and you're creating from what interests you and what I don't know, from your own like entertainment, like, you know, you're writing from your own perspective, from what you know and what you value, and I think you have an experienced eye for, I don't know, video game storytelling, I suppose.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Yeah, like I have interest in these subjects, so yeah, it seems kind of like a natural one-to-one thing that like garbage in, good stuff in, good stuff out. I've actually mostly been thinking about Tolkien recently, and sort of like, well, how do you take what Tolkien did? How do you do the thing Tolkien did culturally without necessarily just repeating hobbits, elves, and dwarves? And something I keep coming back to is like I think about Zoomers a lot. You know, like I have nephews and nieces now, so I think about the next generation a lot. And I always feel like there's this constant theme in literature where it's like the magic world is going away. You know, cowboys and samurai, that's in the past. All we have ahead of us is this sad dystopian world. So I kind of wanted to make something for Zoomers that would be kind of like, here's your world, Zoomers, and it's not a sad, dreary world. Like maybe there's like potential for a Hobbit adventure for you guys too.
Interesting.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
So, all right, so let's talk about some references. I was noticing some references. I got to point out a couple, and I did anyone notice the Adventures in Odyssey reference? Because I totally got that one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right.
Imagination Station, it's right there, man.
Right there, I know, plain as day.
It's like, wait a second, Marmaduke. Were you telling me that you were involved in evangelical Christianity from 1989 to 1990?
This is a Christian homeschool kid identification.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We basically just like, we've all outed ourselves at this point.
Yeah. So for the record, my kids are Christian homeschool kids. And I don't think they've ever listened to Adventures in Odyssey.
Oh, that's so tragic. It's such a good. It's such a great.
Some of it is, but it's like it got for a little while. It got really hard to find, and it was one of those things where like you just missed that part of our life.
They have like a subscription service now. I subscribed to it when I was a tutor / nanny for a while. So they basically have everything they ever did all on one site, but you gotta pay $10 a month or whatever it is for their service. Yeah.
All right. So,
wait, so where's the reference? Is it on this page?
No,
it's what's the danger room? What's the make? Yeah.
I'll scroll up to it. It's okay. So this is the scene. So this is what I thought. This was a really good exchange. It's on this page right here. And so basically what we have is that we have the kid who probably goes to public school, potentially secular, maybe not. But she says, "Oh, it's like the danger room," and she's making a reference to the X-Men. And then the little homeschool Christian kid, who's maybe a little bit more sheltered, she sees a little very innocent. She says, "It's like the Imagination Station." And for those of you at home who may not be familiar, Adventures in Odyssey is a radio program that I believe is still running today, produced by Focus on the Family. Very high quality radio drama about a small Midwestern town called Odyssey and the adventures of an ice cream parlor, World War II veteran inventor. He's kind of a polymath, jack of all trades. And he kind of has this, he's retired and he kind of just runs this soda shop and makes inventions. One of those inventions is a virtual reality machine, and it allows kids to kind of go have adventures throughout history, a little bit like Doctor Who.
Or the holodeck.
Yeah.
From and those had that was a real platform to place the characters from Adventures in Odyssey in Bible stories or in stories from church history, the Revolutionary War, the Crusades, all kinds of stuff.
We have Joshua.
The Chad Mr. Whitaker invents full immersion virtual reality in 1980, uses it to teach kids about the Bible.
Yep.
Basically.
Joshua Hughes says, "Rip Will Ryan." Oh, did he pass away?
Who?
Will Ryan. I think Will Ryan was the voice of Eugene.
No way. Or was he one of the voices of Mr. Whitaker?
No, he was the voice of Eugene. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, gee, wow.
Yeah, he was Eugene. Oh, he passed away. Oh my goodness.
Wow.
Because they've gone through like 3 or more Mr. Whitakers.
I think they're on their 3rd Mr. Whitaker.
Yeah, he died on the 19th.
The first one was the guy who played I think was it Otis on Andy Griffith.
Correct.
Yeah, he was Eugene. So it's a long running show. It's been going on for years. They have like hundreds of episodes, and they've had a little bit of everything. There's been drama. There's been a little bit of romance here and there. There's been like they did this one. They've actually had some very spy oriented.
Well, yeah, because that was Witt's. During the Cold War, he was like the CIA asset.
Right. Well, I guess I'm referring.
So like a lot of the whole part of the thing about Witt's End, which is the name of the ice cream parlor, is that it's all like super automated, which is why Eugene was hired to help run the place. But like the underpinning substructure of the computer that ran the thing is like this ridiculously complex AI that Witt developed, like
applesauce.
Yeah. That's a whole.
Yes. So they ended up doing a multi.
I don't know why I never showed this to my kids. It just escaped me.
It's
20
great
years
stuff.
go by like that.
It's great stuff. So here's what I think is interesting for Jane wannabe gladiator is that for the people who know these references, not only do we have references on the page, and this is what makes this exchange so good, is that not only do we have references being made for people to go, oh, I know what that is. This is how for those of you who are looking for some writing advice, this is how to work references into a scene, because an amateur or developing or a hack writer would just be like, hey reference for no reason. These references show things about these characters. They show that they're coming from different worlds. The one girl is using references from the pop culture that she's familiar with, and the homeschool child is using references that she's familiar with. And in that final panel on the page, the two of them are actually kind of missing each other. What's the imagination station? What's the danger room? And so you see these two worlds kind of colliding a little bit in a very subtle way that actually still works the references in. And so you get characterization. You get to learn more about the sister, but you also get to learn about Jane and her family as well. Excellent exchange. It's really good.
Thank you, Twit.
And for someone who didn't grow up on any of this and did not catch either of the references, I still understood, because at the last panel when Jane just says, we don't watch TV, then I knew that, like, okay, the sister is referencing something that doesn't have to do with TV, and and Martha is referencing something on TV. So I got, like, someone is plugged into pop culture and someone isn't. So
yeah, and also I thought Imagination Station was like the thing from the train conductor in Thomas the Tank Engine. I thought Imagination Station was the thing in there. That I'm now interested to find out about this whole other thing. That was kind of interesting.
Well, cool.
Awesome. It's really good. Like I said, I used to I think it was
Saturday mornings. Well, it depends. It depends on who was, because it was all like syndicated by Christian radio stations,
right?
And so some people had it like every weekly, and then like after like year 5, some people started serializing them like during the weekdays too, and going like back over the catalog repeatedly. So it depends on.
For me, every Saturday morning, instead of basically watching Saturday morning cartoons, it was Saturday morning radio, and I was listening to Adventures in Odyssey. So like I said, again, I was this little girl. This was me. This was my childhood. So it's, again, like I said, really good exchange, good work of references. And as Matt said, even if you don't get the references, you still get what the scene is about.
And you see, now that I understand this context a little bit better, that makes the image of the brother as like a holy knight looking character in one of the fantasy images above. Add some more interesting context.
Yeah. He's kind of this is what I think is interesting in this panel. He's a blend of both, because there's the spiritual, like the halo that we see in like medieval art, that kind of implies there's like a holiness about him, but he's very clearly drawn in the guise of Clark Kent, who on the farm. So we have the blending of Superman with the spiritual. So like basically the secular and the evangelical worlds are kind of like meeting in this Big Brother John character. I'm pretty. So Marm, I know you did that on purpose.
the Halo thing was a definite. That was on purpose. I love halos, and I love what is it? The sign of the church in Renaissance art, right? So the medieval and Renaissance art references come across in the hand gestures and things too, which we'll probably be getting to.
Okay, so actually, speaking of which, I can scroll down a little bit there. And anyone else jump in with anything else that you saw that you want to talk about?
So, something. Somebody should say something. Right
dead
now.
Air.
Yeah. I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
So how early on? Because you kind of before we get to the virtual game space, you are introducing color in a couple minor places. And like, did you always know that you were going to introduce color? Did you always plan that it was going to be like a Wizard of Oz type introduction?
When the Wizard of Oz things came up, I literally had a debate with myself where I said, if I do the Wizard of Oz thing, is that too corny? And then I just argued with myself and said, no, I don't want to do the Wizard of Oz thing just as a reference. I want to do the Wizard of Oz thing because that's how I actually imagine it in my head. I imagine the Nebraska scenes in black and white. I imagine the virtual reality as this just explosion of visual color. So my rule is, if I actually like ask myself as an artist, do you have a good reason for doing this? And I say yes, then I do it, and I don't second guess it or wonder what, will anybody think it's corny? Yeah. Down to like, once I said, okay, I am going to do the Wizard of Oz thing, then I said, well, I might as well make the road yellow. Why not make the road yellow?
I
don't
think I'd actually picked up that the road was yellow.
Nice.
I just picked that up.
I totally missed that.
But maybe one additional thing about that is I kind of wanted to capture the feeling of entering into an imaginative space. So for me, as a little kid in Nebraska, this would have been like reading a book or playing an old, Nintendo Entertainment System game. You imagine a bigger world I get, or maybe if you're a visual thinker, you enter into a visual world, right? So if you see the little sprite character on the game, in your head, that little sprite character becomes a big heroic knight in armor, right? So I wanted something visual that would communicate like that woomph of why the heck is this farm girl so interested in coming into this world? And I wanted people to just see it without me having to like do 2 pages of her doing dialogue to spell it out.
We have AP Comics saying it's such a cool style, and I completely agree. We're all in agreement on that point.
It's not just cool; it's remarkable.
So yeah. Oh, go ahead, Reese.
Oh, I can't remember what I was going to say. Go ahead.
Marm brought up the hand gestures. So what did I'm just before Marm says his piece on it? What did you guys think of the hand gestures?
For me, I didn't think anything overly like anything about it. They just felt to give enhance the action that was going on, right? And also give the idea that there are rules by which these different things go on. So, like if you think about a lot of like martial arts movies or fighting cartoons, they have all this, the secret, breathing techniques or the secret moves that harness the power within kind of thing, and so it just seemed like it was something along those lines.
Yeah, but they're usually not like the anointment of the papacy and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true, but you don't necessarily pick up on that though.
So I actually, when Omachow there gives the tutorial instruction to press your ring finger and pinky into your palm, I actually did it. I was like, oh, that's how you do it. Okay.
Yeah, same.
Well, I followed the instructions, but I did not project a force field though.
Well, that's unfortunate. Seem like it'd be really handy to do.
Did you accidentally shoot a web out of your wrist?
Yeah, no, I did that. That's the other gesture for later. That's the pull move. The ring and pinky is your Super Smash Brothers shield, which I totally saw that.
No, I wanted to be inspired by things that people are familiar with and then kind of put my twist on it, right? Like I was actually hoping that, well, hopefully most people have played Super Smash Brothers, right? So they don't have to think. If I can make it so the reader doesn't have to think too hard about it, I can kind of give myself a little bit more wiggle room, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's details like these that had me thinking that your gaming, your experience as a gamer is that's something that you want to explore in the comic itself, and you kind of want to game design within the comic, which is fun. Because there's plenty of comic stories that have video games as part of the narrative, but they aren't. The game mechanics aren't really explored or explained in a practical way. It's just kind of there. So you could have taken out Omachow, but you put her in because you wanted the game mechanics to make sense, which I think is cool.
Something that kind of gets on my nerves is if it's a story, I guess it's like Ready Player One, where it's like, if you die in the virtual world, you die in real life. And every time I see one of those virtual reality movies, I just think, well, wouldn't it be cool to like play that game without like the fake raising the stakes on drama? Yeah, I'm kind of more, it is its own little Gamers Rise Up. It is its own little world and its own little culture. Yeah. So, and I really love the contrast of a Christian kid who's not part of this culture. I feel like a lot of people from different generations could resonate with that, because it's something that's not part of just like my upbringing or my experience, but it fascinates me.
You're literally describing my childhood, like beat for beat. Okay, so are you going to work in the things about gaming of which make no sense to me, such as frame traps and combo cancels? Are we going to get
all right? There's gonna
better.
I don't even know what any of those things are.
All right, there are gonna be discussions of game mechanics. I guess I'm really annoyed by the Hollywood trend of like the 110-pound atomic blonde who like throws guys around. So I really wanted a character where the fact that she's a frail little girl is a continual problem for her. And the fact that it's a game world actually gives her some flexibility where there are ways to manipulate the game or fight in the game that don't equate one-to-one with a real world fight. So there will be discussions of game mechanics, but when I think about it from a writing perspective, I always think, how would I explain this to my mom, who's a number one Marmaduke, who's never played a video game? And actually, that's a really helpful. It's really helpful to have a kind of audience member in mind when you're trying to explain something you're familiar with, but other people won't be familiar with, because it kind of forces you to maybe think, what is this thing? Why is it cool? How does it work? I'm always kind of like running through, even like, what's a secular audience going to think of this moment? What's a kind of like Christian homeschool kid audience going to think of this moment? I keep those kind of like running in the background.
So the terms I was throwing around are like, I used to watch and still do occasionally fighting game tournaments, and you'll watch the commentators like talk about like what's going on screen, and you're just watching just like the characters beat each other up. But what's going on behind the scenes is they're manipulating and taking advantage of every single advantage they can in terms of how the characters animate. And so like they're canceling their combos into other ones. I think I finally started to understand a little bit of what that was, but they started talking about things like frame traps. And I'm like, what the heck is that?
Well, actually, we already saw something along those lines in this, where she used the mechanics of the game to actually, she messed it up, but she propelled herself in an unorthodox way on one of the pages. So he's already started doing stuff like that in the game.
Yeah. But there's some interesting terminology when you get into some of that, and I think it's George Alexopoulos with all the Opoulos at the end.
Alexopoulos.
Yeah, he's apparently
it's really not that hard. You just have to take out all the extra syllables you put in there.
Yeah, definitely. But he's apparently like really good at Tekken, like. Because he was actually starting to talk about frame data, and when someone starts being knowledgeable about frame data in Tekken, you know that they're actually really, really, really good at it. And so like he had like a thread on Twitter once, and he like went into like a full breakdown of what is going on in Tekken, and I was like, I will never, ever, ever, even if I had the chance, play Tekken against this guy. Like, when you're at that level of mastery, it's like
what was it the other day? There was somebody on this has been a couple months ago now, but there was somebody on Twitter who was just arguing with him, and George challenged him to what the Rocket Soccer League or whatever it is.
Rocket League, yeah.
Rocket League. He's like, you think you know what? You don't want to debate me. Let's settle this on Rocket League. And the guy's just like, what?
Maybe you have a chance there, but never accept a challenge in Tekken from Alexopoulos. He will kick your butt.
If you guys haven't read Problematic, George's comic, gaming comes into that too. It's a really interesting little journey, Problematic, and I haven't heard an update on Mary Sue in a while. I'm not as caught up on indie comics as I should be now, but you guys would appreciate his work too.
Sometimes it's hard to keep up on it when you're making them.
Yeah, definitely.
That's why I like, that there are some people that aren't aware of any of the drama because they spend all of their time making comics, and that's okay.
Right. That's like the Zen Buddhism of comics Twitter and comics YouTube, is when you're just putting out pages and you're completely. Someone says so and so say so and so. Who?
Right, exactly.
I'm sorry, I can't remember who all of these people are. I'm busy with my imaginary friends.
I don't follow it. I'm just busy.
That's the word to be. So, do we have any other closing thoughts before we transition to Kyrie?
I wanted to ask about shoes. That was a big big thing.
Shoes.
Yeah. Can we talk about shoes?
I'm glad you noticed that, Matt, because I also noticed it. But I didn't want to be like, so what about damn shoes?
What, I have to like reveal to the world they have a shoe fetish or something?
Well, I don't know.
You might.
I
didn't add that to your autobiography, but you can.
I guess one thing I thought about shoes, I keep thinking I want something visual, right? Because I'm dumb. So it's like she lost a life. Oh, she lost a life. She loses a shoe. There we go. That's how I'll remember she lost a life. And that was actually kind of like a thing that I didn't know until I was drawing the panel, right? I drew the panel, she's doing that kick, and I thought, huh, she's doing a kick. Oh, that'd be cool. So this is like an example of me. I have the script all done, but then when I get into the art, this idea pops in my head and say, that's great. And then, the shoe can bounce down. Yeah. And that's how we can see what the golem and the dummy are up to. Yeah. So always be open to, I don't know, a little flexibility when you're doing the artistic dimension of things.
So you missed out on an opportunity, right? And I'm going to tell you missed out on an opportunity. One, the shoes are almost the same color as the sky. So in some areas, it's not the best idea to make them blue. But going with the Wizard of Oz reference, you should have made them red.
Well, you got me. You got me.
Or to go with an even deeper cut, he could have made them emerald.
Or silver.
Yeah, you could have went old
in the
school.
book. They're silver.
Yeah.
In the book, they're silver shoes. So
right, yeah. So I think the thing that, and this is something that I think also unites both of these works, and it is a strength and a weakness. So I do have a slight critique. And this unites both Matt C's and Marm's work. That and I said strength and weakness, but personally, I don't know if the rest of the panel felt this way as well. There were moments where I did feel myself a little lost in in the world, or sometimes lost a little bit in terms of some of specific sequences of action. Sometimes I had to reread certain sequences a few times to kind of really go, oh, this is exactly what's going on. Or with this shoe scene, I was like, did she kick that off on purpose to eventually attract the dummy? And I want to say that there is a potential weakness in not, getting a little lost in some of those sequences. But I also want to say that and you're not doing what some comics do, which is to use panel caption boxes or internal like thought balloons to have, I'm kicking the shoe off on purpose, or I just lost a life, to kind of like, spell it out. Both of you, I've noticed, allow more, you're allowing the pages to speak for themselves, and the reader is using what's on the page to kind of assemble the puzzle of kind of what's going on in either plot or sequence. And like I said, that I think that's both a potential weakness, but it is also a strength, because you are trusting you're trusting the reader to put these pieces together and to be rewarded for it. You're not just handing it to them and having narration through captions or thought balloons just spell it out. But also, both of your works have such immersive worlds that are supposed to be kind of puzzled through, because I can tell there's way more to this world than I can see right now and will be explored. And that's something that unites both of your work. And so, like I said, I would say that, as a potential point of critique and caution, that, there are sequences where it's like, I did get a little lost here and there. Not like too terribly. Like I still, definitely got where I was going, but like I said, it's a strength and a potential weakness as well. But the strength part of it was definitely really cool.
I appreciate that, Twitless. And I actually want to talk, maybe kind of like relate your comment to Matt C's work. Something I've noticed about Matt C's work is Matt C, he expects a lot of his readers, right? Like, it's intelligent writing where the characters are having a conversation that's referencing, ancient culture and Homer and the Aeneid, right? But then they're relating that information to their situation. So you've got to like pay attention. And if you pay attention, you're rewarded by getting both like a character moment and world building at the same time. I guess I kind of mentioned it earlier, like I do have like a lot of complicated ideas, and how do you stuff all of this into a page? Like I can't do 20 pages explaining one scene, right? So maybe it's one of the risks of the comics medium is you have to leave some things out or you're going to go mad, but everything you leave out and ask the audience to infer brings in a little bit of that risk. So I have the imaginary audience kind of in my head trying. It's also maybe like a thing with writing or acting. You don't want to ever assume everybody knows what you know when they approach your work, if you know a lot about a particular thing.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that's good.
I just kind of got a like a manga vibe where even in the best, like I'm reading Ghost in the Shell right now, and there's a lot of times where I just think maybe there's just a different way of visually explaining that something happened that I'm having to get used to, and maybe I think Marm might be more fluent Well, I know he's more fluent. Like, I'm just buying manga.
So-
I'm like 35 and I'm just buying manga.
Yeah.
So like, there's a lot of to that visual language that I'm having to I'm still in the ABC level, and I think he's probably explaining stuff that is probably easier if you're kind of bilingual in manga and American comics.
So
I feel like the Franco-Belgians, like Hirsch, everything is about clarity, right? Like Tintin is a big love letter to clarity in everything, from the art style to the writing style.
There's actually a name for their that
Clear line.
particular
Clear. Yeah.
Clear line, yeah.
Yeah. And I can't generalize all of Japan, but I do think there's a tendency for manga artists to think of the page as a composition rather than to think of individual panels as little separate compositions. So I do come with that. Every page is a composition in and of itself, which kind of like, it sets you free, but has the risk of, I call them upside down, backwards, sideways panels. So you always have to kind of like hold yourself in check,
Well, and I honestly think that part of the this, not to seem, I'm not trying to seem critical, Twitless, but I think part of the difficulty that seems to be within some of the action is because it's being presented in this, scroll format, this webtoon style format, when the pages seem to be designed for the page turn. I think and because I like webtoon is somewhat of a challenge for me to read because my brain works in page turns after 32, 33 years of reading comics. That's just how I think. So I felt like I didn't really feel like the action was lost at all, but I'm probably also putting page turns in. I'm imagining turning those pages in.
Like I got no, and I it didn't happen like often, but there were moments where I was like I said, I had to reread an action scene and kind of play it out. Okay, what exactly is going on here? In a couple moments, and like I said, because in a traditional comic book format, there would often be maybe a caption box or a character who has a thought balloon that further reinforces exactly what's going on, hands it to you.
Yeah.
Whereas you're the style that you're choosing to use here, like I said, which has some amazing strengths, is the reader has to kind of like assemble the story a little bit more on their own. And that part's good. Like I said, as a potential point of feedback, it's always there is some risk that a sequence may in fact go over someone's head here and there.
I gotcha. It's kind of like the Stan Lee method. I'm a big believer in get as many references as you possibly can and treat Western comics as a way of adding to your view of manga, treat manga as a way of adding to your view of the Franco-Belgian sphere. Yeah.
Okay, so let me also. I'm not telling you to put in a bunch of captions that explain things. That's not what I was saying to do.
So Twitless is asking for the Twitless edition.
No, I totally get it.
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah.
Jane, the wannabe gladiator for dummies.
You see, this reminds me of a problem a lot of people had with the Battle Angel Alita movie. And like people say, well, I don't understand what's going on. Simple. It begins high-tech world at the top. All the garbage is falling down. People at the bottom build their civilization on the garbage of the civilization at the top. You don't need to know more than that.
There we
Yeah,
go.
I would agree. I can't understand anybody not understanding that movie.
But that's another thing, is that sometimes a certain type of story just kind of flows kind of free in the genre it's in. And like if you know the genre well enough, you're just going to have a good time.
Indeed.
And then there's the Metals work, which deliberately wants to throw as many curveballs at you as possible, as quickly as possible.
Listen, I am my own genre. You just have to accept that.
There we go. All right, so let's pivot. And I'm gonna pull up. But thank you, Marm, for sharing that with us.
Thanks for the feedback, everybody. I appreciate it.
No, thank you.
And we're looking at that Kyrie. Right,
Wild Tales 1, yeah,
Volume 1, and this is the copy that I got in the post on Monday. Look at that! It's awesome. I'm going to put myself on a full screen here. It's awesome, but it's also terrible because you can't see the cover for the shininess. Look at this thing. Look at that. You can look at my screen. Luckily I have nothing embarrassing on there in the reflectiveness of it all.
I actually showed that to my local comic shop owner. He was very impressed with the quality that was produced for the book.
Oh yeah, it's the print quality is amazing on it.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Who did your printing?
Kablam.
Yeah. Okay.
I love
Rags.
Florida.
Yeah.
Well,
All right, so I was asked to do the elevator pitch for Wild Tales of Kyrie.
That's right. Yep.
All right.
Your idea.
At least somebody remembered.
All right. So, Wild Tales of Kyrie is a collection of short stories set within the universe created by Matt Crotts. The main series starts with Kyrie and the Curse of the Macedonian Scroll. I would highly recommend people check out the mainline book written and illustrated by Matt C. It's one of my favorite examples of historical fiction I've ever seen. My way of describing Matt C. is he's a nerd who knows how to use his nerdiness rather than overwhelm the reader with his nerdiness. And you would love it both if you're a fan of history and if you're a fan of classic adventure stories like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. It's going to have everything that the general reader could want, and the nerdy fan of Rome, the glory of the Roman Empire, could want. Wild Tales of Kyrie. We have 2 short stories, Felix Palmriana and Spectre of the Witch, showing us maybe some like side avenues of this universe. Felix Palmriana features Myra, the deadly femme fatale female thief we've met in the first book. And Spectre of the Witch does something interesting by showing us a story set in the 1900s. So it's our first story outside of the late Roman Empire. So we get to see maybe some glimpses of magic and a feel for the world beyond the first book. And I also think you could probably enjoy these stories completely on their own if you haven't read the main book yet. That's my elevator pitch.
Twitless, are you back yet?
Man, that's
back.
great. I gotta hire you.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
I'll be the carnival barker. I'll just like talk it up. Yeah.
I'm not trying to be a jerk there, Matt, but I think he outdid you.
Oh yes, the professional comic review.
I mean, Marm's always been
good point. Good point, Matt.
Yeah.
Good point.
I was going to say it might have
Very
something
ridiculous.
to do. It might have something to do with the fact that I literally said, "Hey, Matt, you have like 5 seconds to prepare yourself." All my best ideas.
No,
like,
Marm's a professional speaker.
Okay. This is why I don't plan my ideas, because I get better ones in the moment. I was like, it'd be great. I should have these people like cross promote. But no, so excellent. Thank you, Matt, for sharing this with us.
Hang on just a second. I gotta put Metal's thing up here. What do we gotta?
That's
the
right.
guys walking.
He's got the animation in Final Fantasy style.
Kyrie trigger. Yeah.
That's amazing. So okay, I remember that happened.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
That was fun to do. Yeah, we have one of you, Matt Reese. I paid for one of those too.
That's true. I've seen it.
It's sitting around.
Anyway,
All right.
Enough of that.
Metal, I gotta hire you for some more of those.
Yeah. Just keep in contact.
Awesome. Okay, so we actually have a bit of a first here, in the fact that this is kind of a anthology style of a comic, and so when it comes to us doing a bit of some voice acting for it, we actually have a bit of a choice. We could do the Chariot story, or we could do Spectre of the Witch, which was written by Matt and Reese here.
That's not entirely accurate.
So, well, that's what the credits say, and that's
I know.
Okay.
I know what the credits say, but I know what really happened too.
Okay.
So, just so everybody understands the level of shade that I'm throwing here, like Matt asked me to help him with the plot, and I did. I helped him with the plot a little bit. We just threw ideas back and forth, and then I couldn't finish it in time, and so Matt finished the dialogue and everything on his own. So yeah, I got credit as co-writer, and I told him not to, but he did it anyway. So.
Here's some good old fashioned comics drama. So we're gonna lose.
You need to use the term creative consultant. It's a better credit.
Yeah, a co-plot would be the accurate thing there, but
okay.
Yeah. I have no respect for people who like put that in their comics where there's like overly refined minutia. Like
I just like
categories for everybody. I just want to give
dialogue on page 3 by
yeah. I feel like there's some sort of hierarchy being imposed on, or some sort of, I don't know. There's like some blood sports behind the scenes. Like I just want to give you co-writer.
This is probably the opposite of blood sports. This is excessive generosity.
I know it's No, you will take this credit.
It's Canadian blood sports.
It's who can out polite the other guy.
No, it's a good story, and I don't deserve credit. So there you have it.
Jeez. But when it comes to voice acting, let's get into it. Like, which story should we voice act?
Well, there's more talking in the Spectre of the Witch.
But Felix is a story that's much more connected to the Roman history aspect of the whole Kyrie story setup.
What if we do like 2 pages from each of them? So like a shorter snippet from both.
We could.
Let's just do the first 3 pages of Felix Palmyra. That's just before the action really gets going. Mm-hmm. I think that makes sense.
Okay, and then we can do like the first few pages, a few pages of Spectre of the Witch.
We've got a sports announcer who leads the story off, and he says here, "Welcome all to the Palmyra Annual Chariot Classic."
Not to worry, my lord. This race has been arranged. An issue with the horses on lap 2.
And with a very special appearance, the Menace of Antioch, the masked champion of Rome, the fan favorite of the Palmyrene royal family themselves, Hadrax.
Sir. Wait a minute.
Contestants, ready? And they're off.
Where is he?
Sorry, kid, this ain't your day.
And scene.
Alrighty.
Oh, that was fun.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so and then we were going to do the first few pages of
no,
Spectre of the Witch, right?
Or we were going to wait until we got to Spectre of the Witch.
I guess we could do that way if you guys really, really want to do it that way.
Okay. I
like this story a lot. I think it was really fun to see the change. I didn't see the well, it was on that page, but for some reason I hadn't put all the pieces together up until nearly the end. I felt kind of stupid how many, because like it seems pretty obvious once you have the reveal, like, oh, these are all the players and here are all the pieces and here's all they fit together. And
it may not. No, I appreciate that. It may not be that. It may need to be more clear.
Well, no, what I'm saying, but that's the thing, is it was one of those things where like it felt like a twist, like a mystery, like it was fun, and like I really appreciated it. But for me, it was one of those things where I was like, what's going on here?
The hips don't lie, Matt Reese.
The hips don't lie. Into the first page, but what I'm saying is like the last page tied directly in the first page in a way that made like everything make sense. It's a really fast read. So So when I did it, I was like, did I just miss this? So I had to flip back and forth, and I read it like 2 or 3 times at first.
I did the exact same thing.
But that's the thing, is it wasn't like there was a hole that was in there. It was like one of those things like I didn't even know the questions I was supposed to ask going into it.
But the same thing with Reese. I had the exact same experience, but I was able to go, oh wait, and then I fit the pieces together and I got it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and that's like I said before is like one thing I've noticed, and we skip metal, but we'll talk about the things we like about the books. Kind of do what we did for the last one, so we'll jump back to you, metal, in a second. But I like the fact that. Getting kind of lost in the world that you're presenting and getting there's this from what I've read so far of Kyrie
Kyrie.
Yeah, I know. It's you have these stories, but they all seem to tie together with a larger story, but the larger story has not yet been told, and it's a mystery story. And I
want to point this out, like, to people who might not notice this, like, it's a mystery in the classical sense of mystery, right? Like our modern concept of a mystery story is like a detective story, like Edgar Allan Poe, Agatha Christie, Arthur Conan Doyle mystery. This is a classic mystery where it's about the unknown and the discovering of the unknown. It's not just about solving a crime. So it's not that narrow focus.
Yeah, there's a little bit of Lovecraft in here. I can see it. But it's not
Lovecraft. Don't shame it that way.
There's a little spice. It's there.
It's bigger and worse than
the spiritual world has reality in Matt C's imaginative universe.
I noticed a tinge of Lovecraft in there.
Cosmic horror.
It's there.
Lovecraft has a tinge of something else in it. That's what
the point I wanted to make though is that
racism.
Don't Google Lovecraft's cat.
Yeah. Oh, you beat me to it.
Well, it's not what I meant, but okay.
It was his dad's cat.
No one Google Lovecraft's cat. No, but the point I wanted to make is the fact that when most people, and I just read Isadora by Darth Lunga a little bit ago.
Oh,
and he taps way heavier into the Lovecraft thing, and he does what a lot of people who usually. What a lot of people usually, including myself, I think, what we usually do when we're using the Lovecraftian idea, and we go too heavy into it. It's the story often becomes overdetermined by the Lovecraftian cosmic horror. And here it was like a little. It's like a seasoning, but it's a very light dash, and so you can barely notice it. It's at the fringes of the story. It's there. You can kind of sense it, but it's just a little. And I really like the fact that you were very restrained in it, because a lot of people just go, oh, and they just kind of like dump it in and they oversaturate their work with it. And so I like this ominous mystery, the sense of ominous mystery. But even after having a lot of characters give a lot of exposition, I'm still not really sure what's going on with the broader story here. And I do feel a little, I am immersed. And
I have some pretty good ideas.
I am, and I'm interested to see where it's going. So this is not just so for those of you who are seeing the historical tale here. There's much more than just the historical tale or tales going on here. These are pieces of a much bigger and I would say ominous so far narrative.
Yeah, and one of the great things about the first story is that it's very accessible. This is the closest to a modern mystery I think that we have in the set, because it's about a crime.
I'd like to add to that. So it's kind of like there's this perspective of looking at this story completely on its own and looking at this story as a tie-in to a bigger story. So I took one look at the female gladiator and said, that's Myra. It's our girl, the femme fatale Catwoman of ancient Rome, right? So it's like, so I immediately had a connection with that. If you didn't have a connection with Myra, then it would be like a surprise at the end. And I guess what's kind of neat about, I don't know, maybe your way of thinking about adventure characters is these kinds of characters, people can pick them up really quickly. People can pick up, it's the dangerous femme fatale girl really fast, even if they haven't read the longer book. One thing I like about Myra is she is Catwoman, kind of, but she's not a nasty, she's tough without being a nasty ball buster, right? So I actually kind of like that there's this neat thing where this kid we've never met before gets his little day in the sun. My view of a short story is a short story should have one solid point and it hits you with a whammy. So you, as a short story, it's well constructed in that it has that one solid point, hits you with a whammy, does build, and it's kind of like your experience is added if you are familiar with Myra's character. And maybe with respect to the mystery, there is this interesting element where this story has an end, but then the question is, does this play into the evil Roman politics at all in the bigger book? So I think you're really successfully hitting the cylinders of newbie could read this. Maybe they have to like figure out, oh, I get it. She was the lady in disguise. Me, I read it. I know the bigger story of Kyrie. I'm trying to make all these connections, right? So
you mean these books right here?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, okay, and
available for sale on CurierComic.com. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, Ben-Hur. I got to talk about Ben-Hur, right? So it's like you also have, in addition to like your Roman nerdiness, you also have kind of like normal Hollywood knowledge. Like was Ben-Hur on your mind? What makes for an exciting chariot NASCAR race?
Yeah. Well, it's on my mind, and it's on, I think, most people's minds when they hear about a comic set in this time period. So if I'm a fan of the time period, and I think I kind of have to be a fan, and I'm trying to tell fiction within that, I have to also be a fan of how fiction has been told about that time period.
Well,
and
sure
I feel like the bet, like you, what's the rabbit samurai comic from the 90s?
Usagi Yojimbo.
Yeah. Like, like he goes to space in some stories, and like he's excited about like it's about the cinema of samurai stories as much as it is about the history of samurai, and Chris Schweitzer does that a lot too. Like a lot of people in America who do historical fiction, I probably less in the Europe side is the impression I get, but at least in America we're so saturated with entertainment media that I feel like we just kind of have to, like, I don't know. I always wanted to do a chariot scene, but I was like, well, how do you do a chariot scene but how can you flip that in a satisfying way? Like maybe someone's trying to lose instead of two people trying to win. Mm. It's one person trying to win, one person trying to lose, and they're on the same chariot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great hook. But I think one of the things is not necessarily that you necessarily have to be a fan of what's going on so much that of what's been done before, so much is that you have to acknowledge it because you've already got a cultural framework within that, and you can't.
That's a better way to say it. Yeah.
And you can't necessarily be dismissive of it because you're being dismissive of your potential viewers or readers' experience of it. Like I think that's one of the things that really hurt the sequel trilogy is that it just talked down to Star Wars fans. The entire thing, every second of those movies just talked down to the people who are already fans, either that they were suckers and would accept the drippings that were just being rewarmed from previous day's dinner, or that it was unimportant and mocked.
Mm-hmm.
I might have an emotional stake in that comment.
Aww. Well, let's talk about something that doesn't do that. Let's keep talking about Kyrie, which I was saying Kyrie, but I'm bowing to peer pressure.
They're both 100% valid.
Okay, all right.
So I will only call it Kyrie, because it's correct.
Okay,
and because
right.
there's that wicked cool 80s song that I grew up with. So.
But the metal, what struck you about this particular story?
Well, first off, I just like anthologies. They're probably my favorite thing to read. I like just taking in a bunch of shorts, whether they're directly connected or not. So like that was cool, and getting to experience just like a couple different stories. Particularly, I really like a mix of the art style in the Chariot story. I thought it handled the action and scenes very the colors were kind of muted. There's nothing that's like overly saturated here. We even go into the whites a lot, almost like if you would be working with watercolors. It's a very like old looking imagery in that way, which fits the tone and setting a lot, but it's still very colorful. So it has that big actiony vibe that you're wanting from the scenery itself. So I thought the art was a very good reflection of the story that we're reading. I didn't really see that there was a twist. I think that's probably because I've seen the characters before, and also there's not a lot of panels on the page, and I might be different than most people, but when panels are big and there's less on the page, I don't read them fast. I read them slower because I'm looking at like every inch of the panel. When there's like really tiny, I just like speed read through stuff. So like I noticed like the legs and everything, or even like where is he? But overall, like I thought it was a really good story. It doesn't force too much in such a short period of time. It doesn't overstay its own limit, if that makes sense. It was brief and it got everything done in the amount of time that you that amount of pages that you set for it.
And okay, so let's move on to Larry. Larry, what did you think? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I liked this because number one, something that was brought to my attention is all of these colors were done by Matt, even though the art style was different. It really brought the whole thing together, a nice wrapper. And I appreciated all the Roman history stuff because this was a very significant point in Roman history that most people don't know about.
Awesome. I want to revisit. Yeah, I know Matt has never heard this compliment before, but by golly, color. So having read Kyrie, having read Kyrie, yeah. There is just I think Kyrie, I think the legacy of Kyrie, one of the legacies, and one of them was the fact of the interconnected pieces of the story. But I since I can't see the what the whole of the story is yet because it's being unfolded to us as we speak. I can at this point I'm just kind of in that eager place where I'm just like, what's coming next? But I will say that one of the legacies I think of the Kyrie series is a testament to its coloring. There is something very memorable about its coloring. I am not a color theorist. Coloring is actually one of my weakest areas in terms of what I can bring to the table in discussion. And yet, even with that being a weakness of mine, there is something that, as I read over Kyrie pages, I've noticed a few things. First off, I've noticed that Matt is really good at using color to reinforce the tone and mood of the piece. He's really good about in this piece we have, I think, very bright yellows. I think if I were to, again, I'm very weak in color theory, so someone jump in or someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that really ties into the yellows and reds. I think really imbue it with action.
Yeah, because it's a hot temperature, so it makes you think there's a lot of energy going on here.
Right.
Another thing that you've probably noticed is talking about how I mentioned there was the whites. He's actually using the direction of the color to help point you in the reading direction, so the color gets more faint and almost like an arrow pointing at the next panel.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's good stuff.
Being lazy is attracted to white, says Bill Watterson. Yeah.
Yeah. See, that's that. Like I said, I thank you for that. Like some color is my weakest area, but even me being weak in color, I could notice like the in some other Kyrie pieces when he's using heavy blues to like imbue it with a more somber. The more somber tones.
This page. This is from the first volume. He has pages where the entire color, everybody, it's one color palette. This is all purples.
Can you make yourself? Can you maximize your size there so everyone can see that? Yeah.
All right, I gotta tell the story to roast Matt
all
C.
Purple.
The origin story is that. Correct me if I'm wrong. You started drawing on 8.5 by 11 because you'd never heard about whether there was a different type of paper to draw comics on, and that's
correct.
Yep.
I had one of the first time I had Matt on to talk about his book. I picked it up and I said, "Okay, I want you on. I'm going to do a deep interview on it." And I said, "What's with this size? It's It doesn't go in my comic book collection because it's the wrong size, but I love it. I love everything about this format. It feels good in my hands. The pages fit just right in here, but I can't put it in a bag. I can't file it away. My inner nerd is turmoil. Matt, why would you do this to me? And he's like,
Oh gosh, basically what every genius ever says when they are confronted with their genius. I don't know, I just did it.
It's the best answer. Well, it creates a panoramic effect when you open up the pages.
The mark of true genius is the fact that it just goes, I just did it. But
intuition.
Wouldn't call that genius. I think it's funny to me because like I picked the medium of just going digital first with every piece of the comics that I'm making, because I was too afraid of doing something like Marm where I'm trying to figure out how to transfer. Eventually it always has to be digital. Right. You're going to get it printed or you're going to share it online. So I couldn't figure out how to. I knew I'd mess it up if I started traditional and then I'd have to figure out how to do it digital. Mm-hmm. You have to figure out the comics 2 times to get it to print that way. So I was like, I'll just start digital. But for some reason I went with 8.5. I went with a physical piece of paper for my dimensions. So yeah.
Well, to continue
if that's genius, then
maybe it's savantism. I don't know. Maybe I'm being imprecise with my terminology.
Like an idiot savant.
Yeah.
I got one more. I got to show up here, guys. Look at this. This is the destruction of Pharos right there.
This is from the main book of Kyrie for
the original book. Yeah, look at that. Look at that. Come on.
I do like the bordering there. It adds a nice touch.
It's amazing.
But this is something that has become a stylistic flair for Matt C in the lettering, and I pay attention to lettering because I've been trying to pick it up myself in my Omega Girl comic book series. Available on Amazon. But Matt uses color in the word balloons very heavily to imply which character, to kind of help you decide which character is speaking. So certain characters will speak with a particular color, and so when you see that color, that character is speaking, and it's something that's kind of it's a defining characteristic of that of Matt's overall color approach that you see on that page. So it's not just the color of the page and the action; it's also the color of the dialogue balloons as well. So, but yeah.
Like part of that honestly has to do with comics illiteracy for me, and I'm not entirely clear. I'm not as clear as other comics readers as to like who's talking, especially if it's particularly hard when it's speech bubbles pointing to something happening off panel, mm-hmm. And I feel like that's it's kind of a limiting factor for comics that everyone has the exact same accent. I get like everyone has to speak with the exact same voice with speech bubbles, unless you find some way to characterize, who's speaking, so that you can do as much, you can have as much freedom as people have in movies where you can tell, oh, I know that actress just said it off screen because I know her voice because I was introduced to her on screen, and but I don't know. So that's just me trying to figure out how to solve a challenge, a literacy challenge.
Yeah, so I'd love to say a couple more words about that, even though people probably like lettering. What are we talking about? But no. So there's some convention, and I think there's even some maybe. I remember reading somewhere to not go overboard when you're trying to establish those separate voices, because it can be very taxing on the reader's eyes if they're constantly having to readjust too much. But here's what. But one of the things that makes your eye do that, and one of the things that some people do when they're overloading it, is they change the font for every single character voice. And if your eye has to basically read like 50 different fonts or like, you know, a half dozen fonts, your eye's constantly having to shift between those fonts. And that can be hard on the eyes, which makes it hard to read the comic. And that's, I think, why people, why the advice is to shy away from that. You've chosen to do something different here, which is, I believe the font stays more or less the same, but you are using some, you're just using a color palette to basically imbibe that voice for those characters. And I remember reading in Kyrie 1, there was one particular exchange for a moment, I went, oh, who's saying that? And then I went, wait a second, this is color coded. And I was like, well, it's very clearly not, it's this character here. So it definitely worked as intended. And I would say that I don't think it was hard on the eyes. So I think I think the experiment you're using is working so far. The only bit of advice I would give is to, I guess, and since you're such a, you know, you're so good with color, you probably,
we lost him.
But I was gonna say, I guess we'll save that maybe for a second when he comes back. His phone might have blown up. But what I was gonna say is in the guiding principle, I think, for lettering is to make it so that it's as easy on the eyes as possible. So the color palette you'd probably want to choose would be something that no matter what different color you choose, it still needs to be easy on the eyes.
Right. I'd agree with kind of like the principle. Lettering is something where the best letterist in the world is when you forget where the letterer exists because you're just absorbed in the story.
Exactly.
It is like an interesting example of comics as a weird medium, right? And we have all these weird problems we have to solve. Like I'm instantly thinking of how like a manga artist might have a little chibi drawing of the character's head in the speech bubble. So you get that little reminder of who's talking. So I think Matt C came up with an elegant solution to help guide the reader to discern the differences without interrupting the reader with something so jarring that it stops them from appreciating the image as a whole.
Right. Yeah. Like I think the best principle for because just what you said, the best lettering is the lettering that does not draw that much attention to itself. It's a very passive art in a sense because.
Well, and I think with his where it excels the most is when somebody is off screen and then he does the inverse with the high contrast. So it's white letters and the balloon itself has this dark color to it. Mm-hmm. Because the white letters, you're talking about the ease of the eye, that is very consistent. So you're just going to read that straight through.
I want to throw out something there that I've actually kind of been thinking about the same problem. So occasionally I'll have an automatopoeia where it's drawn as a giant sound effect, because if I have a boom is an important word. I don't want like a giant Comic Sans boom on the page. I want the boom to look a particular way. So maybe one way to think about it is thinking about a word or dialogue as something minimal where you don't want it to distract the reader's attention versus thinking of a word as a solid object or image that actually participates in the action of the page. So I guess like even like the classic Adam West Batman cartoon has giant sound effects, but definitely in the pre-digital age, there was a lot of creative thinking about how to incorporate, you know, big logos or big words on the title page and throughout the comic, throughout the comic itself.
Yeah, I usually have to just play. And it's weird, but I think with sound effects, play is one of the best things. It's time consuming, but when I just play around with it enough, and then my brain, there's like a subconscious part of my brain, and it lights up. I don't like the lizard part of your brain, and the minute it lights up, it goes, "Ooh, that's it! I know I found it" for the sound effect. But I usually have to just fiddle around with a whole bunch of different things before that little blinking light in my lizard brain just dings, and I go, "That's it. That's the sound effect. That's what it needs to be." So,
yeah, I can relate. I kind of just turn my brain off when I'm doing sound effects. Just like whatever works. Come on, you'll know it when you see it. Go.
Yeah. You'll know. Yeah, you'll know it when you see it, and you just have to play with it until you see it. But okay, so go ahead. Matt,
Who,
did
me?
you?
Oh.
Yeah, you unmuted.
Yeah. Well, you know something I do? I try to find a a sound effect that I can make begin with a K, usually by misspelling it. And I don't know where I picked this up. It might be from like half remembered, like poorly understood, like just kind of like passing by and looking at manga for 5 seconds. And I feel like there's some letters that look a lot like K's or something. But like if you can
you're thinking of calligraphic mark making, yeah, because a kanji, because it's a solid picture, sort of you can use that. Well, it's even like there's even a tradition of like calligraphic writing where you draw the word with the emotion of the word. Yeah,
I remember you doing that because there was a person who was walking up the steps on the ship and you spelled creek with a K, and I was like, is that K for Kyrie? Is this what we're doing? Like,
oh, that'd be terrible. I hope not.
But I did notice the K spelling. I did notice that. Yeah,
K is just a very powerful letter.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know. There's so much to this that you guys all know. Where like it's a silly rule, but if you keep it consistent, then people just kind of adopt it into their vocabulary, I guess, as they're reading, and then it just and I just felt like if you can do K's, I don't know what it is, but like K's just feels like, and if you intentionally misspell, then it's not dialogue, it's not audio. I mean, it's not like spoken audio. You just know it's something silly like a creek.
So, I mean, there's one thing because creek has the bookends. If you're using K's on both sides of it, it has a visual hit to it too that's different.
Yeah, there's like it's like poetry. It rhymes.
I'd add have a fun rule, right? Like it's got to be fun. It has to be fun to read it with a 6-year-old and make the sound effects really big, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
absolutely. It's
got that rule too. Yeah.
My rule is sleep on it. Whenever I'm making big artistic decisions, I sleep on it. It's weird. I wake up the next day, and I
opposite. I have to make the decision now. It's not allowed to linger. Now, don't change it. Go.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, the one thing about the color in volume 1 is that I really like it, but I really if we were doing volume 2 today, the what they call the gambit, the the Indian story, that coloring.
Yeah.
No, not the Kandahar Crisis. There's the Rebel Gambit.
Yeah, that one.
That coloring is just, it's a whole different thing, man. It's amazing.
It's probably too complex. That was really challenging. Like Jose Garcia starts turning this stuff in, and he gives me just the as much as you see in everything in all the other stories, as much as you or I would draw for detail. And I'm like, okay, great, we're done. Like I'm ready to pay you your full, page fee. And then he's got a whole nother layer of all this crazy extra detail. And I don't know what to do with it. And I don't want to turn it off. He's spending the extra time. And so it's difficult to like color that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is the palette you use is so, I don't know, it's foreign. It doesn't fit so many of our conventions, yet it still works perfectly for the story that it's in.
We eventually need to do a whole show on that. I gasped when I saw Jose's art style. Like you successfully introduced me to one of these artists that just makes my jaw drop and say, this is why I love this medium so much.
He's got a lot of similarities to Jane Smith, actually. Yeah, I can see like you would get him.
Absolutely. I want to say this a bit more, like dynamism, right? In animation, it actually isn't about drawing so much as it is about capturing the feeling of movement, which means you actually have to make the drawings as consistent as possible. You want to minimize, expressive details or weird quirks in the drawings and animation. But in comics, you don't have that advantage. You have to capture feelings in still static images. So that you're right. There is a big reason why that clicked with me, which is that you take one look at that art and you feel movement. So Jose almost like deserves his own show, and I think he's got an Indiegogo campaign going right now. So what's his Twitter handle? I'll see if I can look it up.
I want to say it's Jose Garcia, but maybe it's not. Yeah, I mean his Indiegogo is the one to buy for sure. It's going to be incredible. He's insane. Like he has a background. I think he did a what do you call it? Like a journeyman training sort of thing for storyboarding at DreamWorks, and then came back to Mexico and tried to make things happen. And
okay, Radtastical Core. Radtastical Core is Jose's username.
Awesome. Well,
sounds like a flavor of Mountain Dew from 1997.
It sounds like sugar sticks that like where there's like 90s candies.
I want to say one more thing about like the diversity of art in the compilation, which is always kind of like an interesting thing of how do you bring different artists together.
Mm-hmm.
I think Matt, you had I don't know what the guiding principle was, but the sense I got is you're a very individualistic artist, right? You take one look at your style and I say, that's Matt C's style. Which is hard because, well, you sometimes want the styles to pair up well or blend together well, like manga artists with manga artists with manga artists. And you seem to kind of like take an attack of you found individual artists, and then you're kind of relying on the strength of your design. Like you can always spot Myra because she's got the white stripe in her hair. So it's kind of like the only consistent thing across the styles is that all of them have a very strong individualistic flair, and maybe like a little bit of your color sensibility and writing style as the unifying aspect. So it's a really neat compilation from that perspective because we're consistently getting different feelings within the same world.
Yeah, that was a big risk, and I hope it pays off for a lot of readers because, I tried to find short stories that fit with their style. You know, like I got Jose Garcia, and I had like 3 different scripts. So I said, and I picked one of them, and I kind of redrafted it so that it would kind of be, you know, more actiony, less dialogue, more of a dance. And then like Spectre of the Witch, for instance, another rule is that if it's closer to the present timeline, I'm going to use more realistic artists. I don't know. That's just arbitrary. See, like the farther you go back to my 3rd century, you're going to get to my cartoony style. But you go farther.
Yeah, I was just about to mention.
So if you get to the point where you're telling a story from like, you know, the 5th or the 2nd century BC, is it just stick figures or what?
It's like
that's good. That's a great question. I don't know.
It's like
I want to find out.
It's like Hergé.
I can leave you
Kelly.
I can do that one.
No, but one thing I did want to bring up here. Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring up here is the fact that
from Babylon with stick figures.
Oh gosh. Well, you could do cave painting. But one thing I did notice, and it's exactly what you just brought up, Matt, and it's really interesting, is that this story here, Spectre of the Witch, the color choices you have made here actually make it look older. Like there's almost like a filter over the scene that makes it look a little bit more like a sepia tone almost, whereas the ancient Rome scenes were just like awash in this very bright color that saturated more, and this seems a little bit more desaturated, which thematically fits very well with the sort of industrialized kind of I don't know, the kind of cloudiness of that we associate with that period.
Well, and one thing that a little background story on this, one thing Matt and I were talking about when he was first asking for this, he wanted something that would have a feel of some of those block prints, Japanese block prints from the 19th century, and I thought that was great. I love the color palette, and I think he did a really good job of capturing it. And I think I would have been able to spot some of the similarities in the way colors are used, even without knowing that, because it's especially like in this opening scene, And then at the end of the story too, when I don't want to spoil everything, but the end, it still has a lot of that same kind of flair to it. So I like it.
Yeah.
yeah. Like, so something, okay. So for several reasons, I colored these. One of those reasons is financial, because it costs a lot of money to hire a bunch of artists, as you guys know. And if you can cut down on your costs by coloring it yourself, you probably should. Another reason is because people like, I'm trying to bring people into liking the Kyrie books. And if they think that my art style is weird, but they kind of like my colors, which is a common feedback that I get, then I'll give you my colors, but I'll put them on art styles that are maybe more conventionally appealing, but still like diverse. Like I'm picking people that are different and, have a clear visual voice. And I'm pairing them up. I'm having fun with history and culture. So, this is Kaden Rauk is a Ukrainian artist, and I thought it would be neat for a Ukrainian artist to she was excited with a story about Russian imperialism and on the eve of the Leninist revolution, whites versus reds in Russia. And, so that's something that she can connect to. Like, I'm interested in it for reading books on it. She's interested in it because her grandparents, and her parents lived it.
Yeah. So,
and I was trying to do similar things with the other artists too.
Well,
to the extent that it just made sense for the story, not, Pressure Luke is not from Palmyra and he didn't grow up riding chariots, but
well, that just breaks my heart. I really
but where I could kind of tie that in, I try to do that. And then I try to give myself like as you would, I tried to give myself something new I could kind of try out. So I'm trying to, sell my wares as a colorist for other people in the future. So for this particular style, looking at the woodblock, the prints that they would do. I don't even know if it's wood. Whatever those, the printmaking of that Meiji 19th century era Japan, where there's a lot of like even gradients, but on like aged paper nowadays, where everything's a little more subdued. And so I thought I'd play with gradients here and not just do the painterly thing that I always do.
Well, the fact that you're coloring it all also gives, even though you're making slightly different choices, the overall voice of your work, I think, is fairly consistent, which unifies these very, very different stories in a way. And it gives a clear, like, this is definitely, part of your... It gives it a sense of cohesion, which I think is really good. So I even though there's some practical reasons for you to do the coloring, I actually think there's some stylistic benefits to that choice.
I want to say something about maybe like how Matt's understanding of history informs him as a writer. So one interesting thing about this story is we actually get like a discussion of race between I don't know if their names are referenced, but the Mongolian, the guy who claims to be a Mongolian, has a back and forth with the Japanese defector, and the Japanese defector wonders if he's Japanese, and he's not really sure he believes him that he's Mongolian. So it's sort of like in American comics, like American race relationships. It's sort of like, I don't know, it's like there's an American mindset that Americans have a very hard time breaking themselves out of. And when you have a broader view of history and a broader view in the world, you can sort of break out of that and, like have things like wars referenced or different national identities referenced. And when Matt C does it, it's sort of like he's not sending a message at me about how to think about race. You're just really having characters have what feels like a realistic back and forth where their culture and their history informs them, right?
Well,
so when we have
because it's not just see in our dumbed down American version of it, it's all about skin color. Whereas here, it's not just race; it's tribalism. It's like the nation that you're associated with, and there are historical reasons why these people why they might feel, certain ways towards each other, distinct historical reasons. And so it's a much more, I think, real interchange and exchange between about race, as opposed to just, you're X skin color, I'm Y skin color, and blah. So
I will say little background material. There was one line in here that I really, really wanted to try to find a way to work in, and as we talked about it and threw it back at the ideas back and forth, there was one idea that ended up on the cutting room floor, and
oh no,
and
what was it?
Well, and Matt had said, he's like, well, how are all of these people talking to each other? Because I wanted to have a language joke. I thought it would be great to have a situation in there where these two, the Mongolian and the Japanese defector, realize they're both speaking Japanese, and so what would they have been speaking before? Yeah. Matt said. I said, well, I expected everyone to be speaking French. Because the Russians for centuries, for at least 2 centuries before the 20th century, all of their foreign relations was in French. And the French were active in East Asia in the 19th century as well. So it would have been appropriate for everybody to be speaking French before, that scene, but there just wasn't room for that scene. So.
What I almost went there, and then I just thought,
there just wasn't.
Is it going to easily? Because the defector professor is drunk and is getting more and more drunk throughout the story, and I thought maybe just subconsciously, at least, you as the reader would be okay with him being a little confused about the scenario, and I don't know. That was a risk. That was a risk that I just wasn't sure I could pull off. Well,
and I think
are we both speaking Japanese right now? Maybe there's a way to do it. But right now they're just all speaking Russian. Because...
Well, I mean, and part of it is you only we had what 15 pages, I think 16 maybe
17. Yeah.
So it wasn't a situation where, I mean, if it was 22 pages, there would have been plenty of time for something like that. But
yeah,
it is. Sure. It flows really well the way it was. So
kind of like an interesting moment of you trying to figure out how much do we communicate and how much do we have to simplify, due to the constraints of the medium. Yeah.
I mean, it just wasn't worth when we were talking page breakdowns. It just wasn't worth trying to push that in someplace where they didn't add enough to the story to justify the length of time it took, given something else would have to give later on. And
when Twitless was talking earlier about like difficulty, like moments of challenge, trying to understand, I kind of like immediately thought of this story, because this is definitely like a sit up, hey kids, sit up and pay attention, right? Where we really have two unnamed characters that we're principally following, and as they're having this dialogue, you can tell there's something hidden between them that they're trying to suss out about each other. And we're like, it's like, hey kids, it's Tsar Nicholas at war with Japan, so you got to pay attention because this is history stuff, right? And you reward us for paying attention. So they're like, one of the great twisteroos is the professor thinking this, you got to be from Hokkaido, right? And then the payoff for that later is the reveal is he's not really Mongolian. He's infiltrating. There's another great build up where one of the commanders, I think he has a comment like, it's nice to meet someone who's loyal for a change, which is kind of a dig at the professor, right? So there's a theme of loyalty, but
it's at the professor, and it's also at himself.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the other thing about it, is that like everybody else, all of the other characters in the train are some form of, not to spoil too much, sorry. Are some form of traitor.
They're all traitors. Yeah.
They're all traitors. Yeah. So.
Yeah. It's a reward for sticking out. Maybe the thing I'm thinking of is kind of like a TV in the golden age of TV, took on this tone, like classical age TV. It's the sitcom. It's 30 minutes. It's you want to have everything explained for people after the commercial break. Golden age of TV on. There's this there's kind of like a migration of the writing talent migrated from movies to TV writing, and this expectation of I think there's actually like studies on this where the number of characters increase, the number of relationships between characters increase. So it's kind of interesting, like by not having the Stan Lee, let's put everything directly out front there writing style. You are challenging us, but it's a rewarding challenge, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm so glad it worked. There was a lot of risks with this.
And thank you for having a communist villain. I've been needing that.
Yeah. Did you like that? And it's so, I tried to even be it's respectful and subtle. Like it has to be narratively driven there too.
It even works narratively. Yeah. He thinks and reasons like a communist. You as the writer don't break out and have a speech about how much you hate communism. It's just a character motivation that makes sense for the villain. And he's even fun. Like it's fun to give the villain like their moment of praising the proletariat. And there's a great tie-in where when he summons the mysterious snake demon creature, it's one word to him. He says the people have no peace, and the creature says to him, "You have no peace," which is it works two ways. It works in that it's some sort of curse, right? It's like, oh crap. You can feel the weight of that, and it's sort of like a character judgment of the spiritual world, seeing something within the communist that's destructive for the world around him, and ultimately destructive to himself. So, contained in a really quick, immediate, fast-moving moment is like there's a lot of layers to that. I dig it.
It's very Indiana Jones in some ways too.
Yeah,
we got the climax where the villain's like, "Oh, I'm going to use this godly artifact," and oh no, it backfired.
This is judging all of us now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just love, and I love that last this last splash page, and it's a splash page in more ways than one.
Oh snap! So for those of you who are interested, pick up Wild Tales #1. So let's as we get ready to wrap up.
It's available for sale on CurierComic.com.
Yeah, can you get Matt? Can you post the link in the private chat, and then I can post it in our chat here for a best place for people to access and purchase some of these works that we're talking about today. Apparently that was a very offensive remark.
No, I'm fine.
Or Matt had some problems with his connectivity.
He probably had to leave to go get the link to drop it. Do one thing on his phone at a time.
But
let's see if Google can help me with that, because I think Google can.
Yeah, let's here he comes back.
All right.
Yeah, sorry. I did the go back a step from the chat, and I went back out of StreamYard for my phone. So you can go to CurierComic.com, or you can go to mattcrotts.com.
Okay. And
Curie Comic brings you to the Indiegogo, or you can just go to mine. So
it's just mattcrotts.com.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And for those of you interested, if you liked these stories, there is plans, as we continue to just kind of build interest and sales, honestly, in these, because they're a lot more expensive to do than, my own like self-drawn comics. There is going to be an issue 3 and 4, and there's some to be continued moments at the end of some of these stories, and we do continue them, and you're going to see. And Matt Reese is helping. Hopefully, he's going to get co-writer credit at least. on some of these. So
Whether he wants it or not.
We're gonna make you earn it this time.
It's like Scrooge telling Cratchit it's time to make the business Scrooge and Cratchit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Including for Spectre of the Witch. We're gonna do a 2-parter to land that plane.
Okay, good.
So that's gonna be fun. I really like that particular story. So
Yeah, for a second, I was wondering, because some people do like with these anthologies, they're like to be continued in blank blank blank, but then it's like a meta joke of not, or it's like a meta thing where it's like, oh, they're never actually going to continue that line. So for a moment, I was like, which angle are you going to take? Are you really going to continue these? Are you going to leave them unresolved to be a part of this mysterious tapestry?
Yeah. Well, just to briefly summarize, so like Wild Tales is kind of it's a sequel to the Kyrie books, but without having to write, the entire later life of Myra, the female Catwoman character. Like I can just kind of vignette it, and then I can make the events in her life actually be the MacGuffins to treasure tales in later moments. And that dragon, that Japanese dragon, is the pivotal. It's like a climactic event in her life. So you can see in the cover of Wild Tales 1, she's actually fighting that dragon with someone else by her side, and so you're seeing that resurrected dragon. Somehow that dragon got killed off, or something happened, and you don't know what happened with Myra. And the dragon's back, 1,700 years later, and you're gonna find out in the 2-parter.
That's cool.
You see, he keeps saying Catwoman or whatever, a Lara Croft vibe for.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, there's more than one cultural reference, right? Like, there's definitely an element to Matt's work where these, the character archetypes, like that comes across, right? So you want a quick, easy understanding word to describe it, but it's never just one thing.
It's the character archetypes.
I started with female Han Solo. Actually, is kind of how I got excited.
Oh, if you go female Han Solo, you end up with Lara Croft.
Yeah,
that's just Lara Croft.
Yeah, that's
the same character.
That's correct. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. This has been a lot of fun. I can see why you guys do these.
Good.
I took a lot of notes. I appreciate the feedback.
I am glad. This is a club. It's obviously for our chat, and for the people who watch us. But I wanted this club to be also a place for us, so that we could experience our works together and talk about them, and even for people to ask questions about their own work and say, "What did you think of this thing I put in here?" So. That's kind of what I'm hoping that this space can allow for, and it's a lot of fun. And so I'm really glad everybody could be here. I'm glad that you shared. Thank you all. You've been great, and I hope this was fun for you.
Thanks for putting this together.
Yeah. Well, we'll be doing this again next month. We don't know who's going to show up or what we're going to have for sure, except that we are going to be talking about Wild Tales 2, because Larry Bernard wrote. Or co-wrote, or however it was. I don't know.
I'll fully tell the whole story. It started on Twitter. Matt was like, I really want to find a way to combine these two obscure characters from Kipling with Holmes and Watson. And I was like, bro, here's my pitch. And then I said, here's a script. And my script idea was more kind of like those Guy Ritchie Sherlock Holmes movies a little bit. And then he said, well, I was thinking something more like this. And then I gave him a more traditional pitch. And then we went back and forth, and then we sort of painted these characters out a little bit. And what I loved about this is The Man Who Would Be King is something very similar to me from this whole nerdy spectrum we're all from, because I'm a Freemason. I grew up in a house among Freemasons. I was in DMLA, so I felt a connection to both the Kipling story and how Kipling weaves Freemasonry into it, as well as how Freemasonry was used in the Hollywood movie with Sean Connery and Michael Caine, who are artistic inspirations for the comic book versions of their own characters.
All right.
Well, so next month we're talking about Larry, and when I don't know who else. We'll figure that out at that point.
Yeah,
Omega
I had
Girl.
an idea, but Twitless told me it was a bad idea, so I guess we're going to talk about it later.
I didn't say it was a bad idea. Oh my gosh.
Well, wait, didn't you guys do Omega Girl on the first one of these?
No, we have not.
No.
We have not discussed Omega Girl yet.
No, we did. We did one of my books and then one of the Metals books.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not that it's a bad idea. Twitless just has a dream combo that he's trying to make happen with his
That's
book.
also true. That's also true. So, that's not the one I meant to hit. I meant to push this little button right there.
Yay! So
This
check
is a
out my
comic that Twitless writes that has nothing to do with anything we've discussed at all, but it's hilarious, and it is only slightly less funny and full of slightly less authentic drama than my own Forces of Good and Evil.
but mine is slightly better drawn. So
Yeah, it is. Because Taylor, who does the Cartoonicus, much better artist than myself for Chris. And myself for Chris Lawton did the bulk of Force of Good and Evil. And it's we got better artists later on, but the early stuff is still pretty rough.
You got to use the tagline, the origin of the Virgin versus Chad meme that never was.
Yeah,
that is a good.
That's fantastic.
Tagline.
And we'll actually shake that out at some point. But anyway, because Force of Good and Evil is the story of Chad becoming a Chad.
Excellent pitch.
Yes.
And the medal showing his characters, right? So
yeah, those are the ones from the book we did last time.
Yep.
So only now they're in
Rolls and
color.
relics. Yeah, I was bored and my scanner's down right now, so like I'm inking pages, but I can't color any of them. They're like on back order until I get a new power cord for my scanner. So I'm like, what can I do? I don't know. I'll pull the Japanese industry. I'll take a single panel out of my comic and turn it into like an anime looking image. Just because, why not?
He succeeded. That looks,
yeah.
And so, always think that you guys can check out my Patreon, and if you want to see how we retrofit and fix up comics. I'm currently working on doing edits on, and I'm going to be putting those up here sometime soon on a zombie comic called Z Bites. It's a zombie comedy that my buddy Chris Lore co-wrote and has brought into our universe, and we are retrofitting it and doing a reprinting and all kinds of fun stuff with that. So that's the story. And Adventures of Omega Girl is available on Amazon. And next week, I can't even remember, man. It's gonna be like the first. Are we doing the Superman next time?
I remember us vaguely talking about Superman, but was it for that date? Is the question.
I can't remember if let me look at the calendar here.
Well, what are you guys talking about, Superman?
Superman Smashes the Klan, written by Gene Luen Yang, I think art by Kuri
it's
Hiro.
part of our ongoing series of
we're
Gene
doing
Yang's work.
Yeah.
I mean,
hey,
I like the
of
art.
Yang, well, we'll move on. I don't want to spend too much time on that one. But I can't. We'll talk about that off stream. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, we're gonna call it there. It's been a long show, but I think it's worth it. Some fun comics. Go out there.
Yeah.
Read Jane Wannabe.
James Smith, Wannabe Gladiator.
Jane Smith, Wannabe Gladiator. It's available on Webtoons. There will be a link in the description soon. And follow, purchase, read Curie for all of your fantastical, proto-heroic, like this hero sagas, man. Okay, it's historical fiction at its absolute finest, available to you, the reader. Enjoy it. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll catch you guys all next time on the internet. And until then, keep reading comics.
Bye.
Love you guys.